the National Press Gallery on Parliament Hill. And we're here today on the fourth round of negotiations for the United Nations Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Plastic Pollution, which of course Canada is hosting on this Earth Day. I'm joined by some incredible domestic and international leaders that have been combating plastic pollution, working hard, including Jim Puckett from Seattle with the Basel Action Network, Pui Yi Wong from the Basel Action Network from Malaysia. I've got Lilly Woodbury from Surfrider Canada, and Chloé Dubois from Ocean Legacy from the west coast of British Columbia. Now, back in 2018, I tabled my historic motion M151 to combat plastic pollution, which was supported unanimously by the House of Commons and many Canadians. And that motion created momentum across the country to take on plastic pollution and combat plastic pollution, which we know is a critical problem right now to the biodiversity of our country and our planet, and of course to the climate and the health of all mammals and species, including humans. And we know that if plastic wins, we lose. And right now we're facing a dilemma of seeing plastic production triple in the next 25 years if we continue down the path that we're going. And we need to take action. And Canada needs to take action. We know that the Conservatives, they don't care about tackling this issue, that they actually want to increase plastic pollution. They're in the pockets of big oil and the chemical industry that creates the plastic sector, and they don't believe in evidence and science. The Liberals, well, they've taken a slow reaction in terms of tackling this crisis, and I appreciate the Minister of Environment really stating that he wants to take this on. But let's face it, they have not put in a cap on oil and gas and the chemical industry and the production of plastics, which we expect and need that to happen in the negotiations here as host nation. Also, they continue to subsidize the oil and gas and chemical industry, despite the fact that they're fighting the government as the government tries to implement a single-use plastics ban. This is outrageous. And this is a single-use plastics ban that is supported widely by the majority of Canadians. Also, we need to stop the flow of plastic to developing nations, and the government of Canada needs to close loopholes that is allowing the circumnavigation of plastic pollution being sent through the United States that ends up in countries like Malaysia, which Pui Yi is going to talk a bit about. We need to ban the use of contaminated and toxic plastics that are currently used, and we need to ensure that we have extended producer responsibility for plastic production and expand the single-use plastics ban and to include also industrial plastic use, like Rachel Blaney, my colleague, who has a motion to ban polystyrene in aquatic environments, as well as my colleague Lisa Marie Barron, who wants to ensure that we're dealing with the shipping of plastics when it comes to our oceans, and ensuring there's an ecosystem service fee to deal with cleanups of that, as well as making sure that we're able to respond rapidly when there is an emergency. Lastly, the government created a ghost and derelict fishing gear fund to remove plastics from our oceans, and they have not reinstated that fund. Here we are, host nation, to deal with combating plastics, and the government has pulled funding. And that funding is critical right now because those nonprofits that are tackling plastic pollution to remove plastic from our marine environments, that infrastructure is in place right now, and that is going to be at risk should the government not continue funding. I'm going to turn the mic over to Jim Puckett from the Basel Action Network, and he's going to speak about the threat right now of Canada continuing to allow our plastic to be shipped to developing nations, and give him a chance to speak about the importance of a motion I tabled just last week to deal with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gord. Happy Earth Day, everyone. I'm Jim Puckett. I've been working on this issue of toxic colonialism since 1989. I've observed the Canadian response to it, and it's been a very disappointing one. Over the years, they have promoted fighting against the Basel ban, which is to ban completely the export of hazardous waste from developed to developing countries. And Canada still hasn't ratified that ban. And moreover, they've been fighting against it. So much of this waste that moves is under the guise of recycling, and a very small amount of it does get recycled. But as Pui Yi will show you very graphically, so much of it gets dumped and burned. And this is the big myth of the fraud of plastics recycling that we have to counter at this conference that's coming up and the negotiations. So many people think the problem will be solved by recycling. The problem is only going to be solved by making less plastic. We have to look upstream, and we're looking for Canadian leadership on that. Another thing we're very concerned about, which Gord has introduced this motion, Motion 120, will try to get us into the Basel Ban Agreement and increase enforcement. But what Canada and the U.S. did after the new plastic amendments were adopted in 2019 is they rushed to the U.S. and together they created an arrangement, an illegal arrangement to have complete free trade between the Canadian and U.S. border, either way. But what we're very fearful of, and we know is happening, is that exporters in Canada are using the U.S., which is not a party to the Basel Convention, as a transit state to move things out of the U.S. to countries like Malaysia. This has got to stop, and we're very happy to see that we can turn this around, starting with this motion 120. I'm going to turn it over now to Pui Yi, who will give you some graphic details, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, MP Johns, for inviting me here today. So, to put it simply, plastic recycling is contributing to plastic pollution. When you send your plastic waste to Malaysia for recycling, you are essentially polluting our soil, our water, our air, and our bodies, as well as our wildlife. And I'll illustrate this through 3 points. I'll show you data, disappointing data, that Malaysia is the top importer of plastic waste from Canada. However, as Jim mentioned, a lot more is going to the US. And from the US, where the rest of the plastic waste is going, Canadian plastic waste, we don't know. And I'm sure a lot of it is ending up in Malaysia and Southeast Asia as well. And I will also bring you quickly to look at factories and dump sites in Malaysia. Malaysia is a beautiful country. We are part of the Coral Triangle. We are part of the most diverse, biodiverse nations in places on Earth. And we have a lot of people, government and civil society, working very hard to protect our spaces. But this is how it looks like in factories. I don't know if you can see this, but some of these factories are legal, some of them are illegal, and microplastic pollution is a guarantee in their storage sites. And illegal open burning within facilities fenced in by high walls so that no one will know what's happening inside. In the factories, we've also seen microplastics in the wastewater. As I mentioned just now, the storage sites leach microplastics. There's no way you can control them. And residual waste from mechanical recycling. These residual wastes are going to our landfills. We have 137 landfills. Only 27 are sanitary landfills. The rest are open dumps. And no, we don't want more waste incinerators to incinerate imported waste. Now I'll bring you to dump sites. So just now I mentioned landfills, right? And our landfills are essentially open dumps. We have illegal dump sites. And these illegal dump sites are where we found various plastic bits, shredded plastics. These are from Indonesia, packaging from Canada. You can see Canada right here. And these are all found close to rivers, close to banana plantations, close to cows. It's polluting our food chain. It's going into our water canals. It's going to our rivers, and essentially it's going to go back to you. It's a global problem. And we really need to stop thinking recycling is the way forward. We need to find a way to end plastic production and pollution before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Pui Yi. I'm now going to turn it over to Lilly Woodbury from Surfrider Canada.
Hello, my name is Lilly Woodbury, and I'm the Regional Manager with Surfrider Foundation Canada. I live in the unceded and traditional territory of Chloé First Nation on the west coast of Vancouver Island. And if you're unfamiliar with Surfrider, our mission is the protection and enjoyment of the ocean, beaches, and waves, which is enacted through a powerful activist network. We work on all kinds of coastal and marine issues, but plastic pollution continues to be one of our biggest focuses. And for over the last decade, we've led many plastic campaigns and led countless coastal cleanups, just continually collecting the never-ending wave of plastic pollution that is besieging the coast. So this includes anywhere from polystyrene pollution, fishing and aquaculture gear, pre-production pellets, along with many other consumer, industrial, and commercial plastics. Along with this, we've also responded to numerous shipping spills, including Hanjin shipping in November 2016, as well as Zim Kingston in October 2021. And we are still seeing the legacy impacts of these spills as we're continuing to collect this debris up and down the coast. And of course, MP Lisa Marie Barron, she had launched a motion to address this, and we continue to see no action from the Government of Canada. And it's important to note that the burden of this is impacting local communities as well as First Nations up and down the coast of British Columbia. So this is also a waste colonial issue within Canada. Internationally, this also connects to Gord's new motion 120, which is calling for the immediate ratification of the Basel Convention ban amendment to stop exporting plastic waste to developing countries. Again, another form of waste colonialism. So as part of the High Ambition Coalition and also the Government of Canada hosting INC4, which kicks off tomorrow, we definitely need the Government of Canada to take stronger, ambitious action, both domestically and internationally. And so we hope to see that come through this week. Thank you.
Thanks, Lily. Thanks for your leadership as well. Next is Chloé Dubois from Ocean Legacy.
Thank you so much, Gord, for this opportunity to speak. My name is Chloé Dubois. I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of the Ocean Legacy Foundation. And we are headquartered on the unceded territory, traditional territories of the Musqueam Nation out in West Coast, British Columbia. Ocean Legacy is a world leader in developing plastic pollution response programs and has spent the last 11 years cleaning the coasts of British Columbia and the world. We've also developed the first and largest ocean plastic collection and recycling programs in this country. In 2020, the Ghost Gear Fund was initiated with the unanimous support of Motion 151 and has provided critical funding and capacity development for this entire country. We have the longest coastline in the world, and we have a great responsibility to take care and steward this country in partnership with Indigenous communities. But this funding has completely dried up and has not been reinstated. This has left hundreds, if not thousands of people across this country wondering and in limbo whether or not their programs and the resources and infrastructure that they've been developing over the last 3 to 4 years, if this will continue. The federal government has a key responsibility to continue to provide resources to protect these critical ecosystems that support the health and well-being of all coastal species and the socioeconomic development of these coasts. Canada is hosting the INC4 and is positioning itself as an international leader in this sector. This is your opportunity to take your commitments seriously. We need well-funded, annual, permanent fiscal support. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much to all these great champions and leaders that have been fighting and combating plastic pollution for so many years. I'll take questions, and I can also help facilitate questions for these incredible champions.
We will start with questions from the room and then on Zoom. If you have a question on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. Natasha Bulowski, go ahead.
Hi, thank you all for taking my question. I'm with Canada's National Observer, and I'm wondering, maybe Gord first, you could comment on the federal new plastics registry came out today, and then I do have a follow-up question, but I would welcome, responses on the registry from other speakers as well.
Well, thanks, Natasha, for the question. I haven't seen the release today on the new plastics registry. It's certainly something that we welcome and we've been advocating for. We just want to make sure that it actually is explicitly clear that what plastics are dangerous to the Canadian public are listed, and also that the government's going to ban toxic chemicals and toxic plastics from being used, especially in the environment and as well anything that's related to human health, and that the government's going to put a cap on all plastic production. And, you know, if those things aren't part of the package here at UNC4, it's a failure of the government. They need to stop subsidizing oil and gas, and especially an industry that is fighting the wishes of all Canadians and unanimously supported in Parliament single-use plastic bans that have been expressed and supported throughout this country from coast to coast to coast. And in the meantime, the government is not able to implement this ban because of the pressure from the courts, and the government needs to stop subsidizing this industry. It's absolutely outrageous.
Thank you. And perhaps we can follow up after you've been able to read a bit about the registry. But broader question that I'd be interested to hear from many of you on is just more so on the issue of plastic production. I've heard from many environmental groups that this is one of the main focuses, but that a lot of countries, possibly Canada included, are not so eager to address that particular side of the issue. So if any of you could offer insight onto Canada's current position, where you would like to see that change, but also if there are any other countries who are not eager to address production.
I'll pass it over to Jim in just a second, but I do have a comment. We know that the Liberals have been in the pockets of oil and gas, both corporate control parties, the Conservatives as well. They're afraid to take them on. A cap is absolutely critical in Canada and also here as host nation to be able to bring the international community on board. Like I said, we're on the pathway to tripling plastic pollution in the next 25 years. If plastics wins, we lose. So it's absolutely essential that the government takes them on. And we know the Conservatives, they actually want to increase the production of plastics. They don't want to slow down the production of plastics. And maybe I'll let Jim speak to the international community on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The entire issue of plastics pollution is only going to be solved looking upstream. We've had now 50 years of hearing that we're going to recycle it. Don't worry, it's going to be recycled. Only 9% to date, they say, has been recycled. I think it's far less than that because they're counting all the many years of exports to China, et cetera, where it was very partial recycling at best. The big oil producing countries are pushing really hard against any kind of production reductions, and we need countries like Canada and the US to step up. I was very disappointed yesterday to listen to the United States backing away from reducing production. What people don't realize, we're not just talking about plastic polymers. Every plastic has toxic additives in it that are cancer causing, that affect reproductive health. We're learning more and more about microplastics, that they're completely unrecyclable, and moreover, they are also causing health issues. The evidence is coming in daily about how microplastics that are in our bodies right now that we consume every week, the equivalent of a credit card of plastic, of microplastics, and people don't know the effects of that. So we're realizing that plastic is not really an inherently circular material. It's different than metals, it's different than paper. We have to stop production.
Lily, did you want to add something?
For sure. Yeah, just to echo Gord's and Jim's comments, we absolutely cannot recycle our way out of this crisis. We know that recycling is a myth. We absolutely need upstream solutions, looking like a 70 to 75% cut in production of plastics by 2040 if we want to deal with the triple planetary crisis of biodiversity loss, climate, and pollution. And to add on to the human health element, there's a new report that shows that there are 16,000 chemicals across the plastic products and packaging that we're using, and 4,200 of those chemicals are chemicals of concern that are highly unregulated. So this is not just a planetary ecosystem climate issue, this is also a human health and human rights issue as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Lily.
Ms. Belowski, if you have one more question, we would have some time left.
Yeah, so one more question would be, I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, there's been some reporting on how, the environment minister has, sort of backed away a little bit from the prospect of more directly addressing production. And with this registry that essentially gets plastic producers to report on, what types and quantities of plastics they put on the market and how those move through the market. I guess I'm wondering, as the NDP, how are you trying to advance the issue of reducing production through your supply and confidence agreement?
Well, like you outlined, this is very important, the plastics registry, but it needs to go hand in hand with not allowing the production and use of plastics that are, contaminated or they're dangerous to human health. This needs to happen. We need to have a cap on all plastic production so that we don't end up on the path that we're going, which would be tripling of plastic production, by 2060. In terms of ensuring that we've been calling for, and you've heard us loud and clear, to stop subsidizing oil and gas and the chemical industry. This is an industry that is right now in court fighting the Canadian government to implement a single-use plastics ban that is widely supported by Canadians, unanimously supported by Parliament, and the government continues to subsidize them. That is something that we've identified in the confidence supply agreement and that needs to be rectified. And it's something that we're continuing to push the Liberal government to do, to stop all subsidies to oil and gas, and they have not fulfilled that. So it's something that we're going to continue to be having conversations with the Liberal government on. But it's absolutely outrageous that these companies, these multinational companies, are getting subsidies from Canadian taxpayers while they're taking Canadians to court to fight against something that Canadians want. That is absolutely wrong, and it needs to stop. And also, again, just ensuring that we expand the single-use plastics ban. It falls so far short. Other countries have been able to implement bans. It's unbelievable that Canada can't get this done. And ensuring that we also ban the use of polystyrene. That should not be used in marine environments and aquatic environments, and the industrial use of it needs to stop. So we expect Canada to take leadership here at the UNC4, and they need to have some courage. They need to stand up to the oil and gas and petrochemical industry. They need to show and reflect what Canadians want. They want to combat plastic pollution. They want a cap on plastic pollution. They want extended producer responsibility. They want us to redesign how we use plastics and reduce the amount of plastics, not increase.
Any more question in the room or on Zoom?
I was just wondering, are plastic imports something that you have been thinking about at all, or yeah?
Plastic exports?
Yeah.
Plastic exports is something that...
No, imports.
Imports? Well, we manufacture a lot of plastics here in Canada, and in fact, again, back to Conservatives, they want us to grow the plastic production industry, despite the fact that we know it has a huge impact on biodiversity, on our ecosystems, on human health, on birds. And we're finding it in our fish, as you know. It is compounding the problem, and it's the triple threat. It's not just biodiversity, it's part of the emissions that it's contributing to in terms of the climate change, and it's also it's a huge threat to human health and to the health of our well-being. And so we need to make sure that we're taking full action on this. And anything short of the steps that I've outlined here today, it's not responsible as a host nation for us not to set out huge leadership. And right now, Canada has stalled on implementing promises they've made. They're cutting funding from ghost and derelict fishing gear funds. They're allowing the shipping of waste to developing nations. It's completely irresponsible what's happening right now. And they failed on their commitments outlined in M151 that was unanimously supported by Parliament. So we're hoping that the minister is going to outline clear steps and taking actions here at home so that we can actually get the international community on board. If we can't do it in a developing nation like Canada, then who's going to take the leadership? We have the longest coastline in the world. We have the expertise to take the leadership that's necessary, and there's other countries that have been doing it. So this is really important that we take leadership here at UNC4, and we're calling for the government to really be a global leader in terms of being the host nation and moving forward.
Thank you. This will conclude this press conference.
Thank you.